working now. So welcome all. This is our second session for the Manchester Law Journal. This time we'll cover academic research. And again, if you want, we can have more sessions like this one. My contact details, you know me anyway, and they are already online, so you can check them. What I'm planning to do today with you, I'm going to do a bit of a recap. We covered last time how to write and how to propose a title, aims, and objectives for any research proposal. What do I mean by that? Any disciplines from medical science to zoology or law, political science, we follow the same protocols, whether we are in China, in Brazil, or here in the UK. We want to establish certain items. Why? Because, and I'm going to explain this today, because it has to do with future research. Someone may agree or disagree with our points. So we use not a template, but some basic elements that are considered necessary for any good academic paper, whether that paper is a standalone academic journal, a book, a PhD dissertation, or an LLM dissertation. So again, this is not only for the Manchester Law Journal, it's in general. This will help you in the future if you decide to be an academic writer, an academic author. What we did with one of our candidates today, I put the example of the elephant. You may talk about the elephant as a whole, or you may refer to a particular part, a chunk of that elephant. My advice, because the kind of essays we are looking for, in particular for the Manchester Law Journal, are rather short in terms of the word count. My advice, and I would say that even at PhD level, be precise, laser focus. If not, you will end up with something very panoramic, a panoramic view about. And that's usually what we call in academia a handbook. So you will be writing a handbook, a description about facts or about a situation or about an issue or about a problem, but you will not offer any critical or experimental analysis. So my advice, if you are laser focused, you will target a particular chunk of that particular issue, and then you will develop your own angle, your own point of view, whether that's a journal article, short one, or a monograph. You may have, and again, we introduced last time this, what I call a unidimensional view or a multidimensional. Both of them are fine. We tend to see in law, political science, international relations, what I call unidimensional. You may take one method, let's say case studies, and your complete paper will be based on that particular method. You may take one particular case study, not only you narrow down the methodology, you narrow down as well the case studies, and so on. Or you may take what I tend to do with my own research, what I change is the perspective, a multidimensional. You may use several sciences, several disciplines at a time. I tend to write myself using law, political science, and international relations. And you may mix, we have someone else today, we may mix different methods. That's why I will talk today not only about methodology, but designing your research, the design behind the methodology. Because although we teach in theory methods separately, you may combine them. I'm going to put an example for lawyers here. You may talk about legislation, an act of parliament, criminal law. That black letter or doctrinal methodology, if you only narrow down your research and you talk about the conceptual elements or how that law came into existence, the parliament and their discussions. Or you may bring another kind of research, a multidimensional, by bringing case studies. You may decide to explore how judges have applied that particular act of parliament. Without knowing, you're combining two different methods. You're combining black letter law with case studies. And that's what I refer to as change in perspective. The only thing, you have to articulate that usually in your introduction. You have to tell your reader what you are doing. Why? Because you anticipate your reader what he or she will be expecting and whether he or she will dedicate that time to read your paper, your book, or whatever you are writing. Last time we covered titles, aims, and objectives. Today, we are going to cover mainly what has to do with the proposal in the sense of methodologies, search engines, and how to gather information. And next time, I'm going to center, so the final session of these 3 sessions, I'm going to talk about the structure, how to define chapters, paragraphs, and so on, and different sections within the essay or the monograph. Very briefly, what we did last time, the difference between the aim and the objectives. For all of you, and again, ideally you make that clear for your reader. You set, I would say, an intention, a direction. When you are writing something, you tell your reader why they should be with you. And the objectives have to do with how particular instances in your paper or in your book will help develop that particular aim. So let me show, I think to me, usually that's what I tend to do. I show with my own example, not to show off what I do, but just to show you how I do things, to offer an example. This is the introduction for my latest book, 2020, published. So I'm not going to talk about the whole introduction. It's simply to put the example about how you deliver aims and deliver objectives within usually the introduction, either for the essay or for a book, a PhD, or an LLM dissertation. My complete book is about territorial disputes. Again, I'm not talking about the book. I'm talking about my introduction. And after defining the kind of central element, territorial dispute, I disclose here what is the main problem for me. I make the decision. I made the decision. Why? Because I am the author. I'm writing the book. Yes. Same with you and your articles. You are the author. I'm here only to guide you, but it will be you making these decisions. Yes. So you may choose some of these elements. You may change the order. You may add more elements. I suggest these are the basic components of any good academic writing piece. One of them has to do with defining the problem. To me, when I explore territorial disputes, I use 3 sciences, law, political science, and international relations. I see that we have a menu of solutions. None of them seems to be working in cases like Falklands, Gibraltar, Jerusalem, the difference between Palestine and Israel, and many others. To me, there is a clear issue, and I'm not going to go into detail. But again, I establish a problem. Because I have a problem, and that's what we did last session, we started playing with a problem, area of interest, what kind of problem, what kind of situation I want to explore, and then I will decide what I want to do with that situation. But in principle, there is an issue. To me, the issue is we have territorial disputes everywhere, we have many solutions, none of them seem to be working, there is a problem. So I aim to solve this mystery between inverted commas. So I can do many things with territorial disputes. I can do many things with remedies. I have to tell the reader, and that's, again, this is a long book. It's, I think, more than 90,000 words long. So I tell my reader in the introduction very early, probably at page, my second page. At page 2, the monograph aims to fill a major gap on, etc., etc., etc. Again, I'm not going to discuss the content of my book. That's not the point. The point is to show you the example. You may use any synonym, you may use any expression, you may use any form, because at the end of the story, we have people today from Hong Kong, we have people today from the UK, and maybe in the future, people paying attention to this online, other jurisdictions. You will have your very unique style, culturally and stylistically. You have to follow your style, I insist on that. However, there are certain elements that should be present there. One of them, tell your reader, where are you taking them? Yes, that's what I call aim. You set the intention. So paraphrasing, the intention is here that there is a gap in law and political science, and I'm going to offer a global platform to discuss X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And finally, one of the many things you may want to include, the methodology. One thing I discussed last time, because I've seen this in particular, even at LLM level. You may choose any method you want according to the object you are going to discuss, the issue you want to explore. You don't need to define these objects within your essay or your monograph. You may, however, you are wasting space. We all know, especially academics, what is black letter law, what is doctrinal analysis, what is case study, what is an empirical analysis. So you don't need to tell us, your reader, yes. However, you need to explain, and I strongly advise you, you should explain how you, author, will make use of that particular method or set of methods related to your aim, yes? So I'm telling you, I'm taking two approaches or two methods to study international relations. It's a modified realist method, a particular author created that method, and I put that in my footnote, and case studies. And then I explain how, in this short paragraph, how I'm going to do it. I have then later in my book 3-4 different chapters about how I do this, yes? But in principle, that is my introduction. Let me come back to my PowerPoint here. Ideally, again, for your research proposal, if you are drafting only, or if you're already working on your paper, it should come from the introduction, what you want to do. So the problem you want to address, the issue you want to explore, compare, contrast, analyze, review, call it whatever you want. That is you, yes? And then set your aim. Where do you want to take your reader? Yes, what journey are they taking with you? By doing that, you will have to define, depending on the intention you set, you will have to define the objectives you have. Right now, we did that last time, and we played with people who came last week, 2 weeks ago, how to write, draft, and then write titles, aims, and objectives. The idea today is to cover very briefly methods and methodology, and what I call designing your methodology. Locating. I assume you are familiar with this. It's not only locating sources, it's reading those sources and having a critical view about the sources. You want to include, again, you are responsible for what you write. Not legally, morally, I'm talking more. So try to make a conscious decision, a critical decision about what kind of sources you want to bring into your papers. That is why usually books, PhDs, and LLM dissertations will have what we call a section literature review. Again, I'm not going to talk today about the structure. The structure, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks' time. I'm putting the example, usually the literature review will come after the introduction if I'm writing my essay, or as chapter 1 if I'm writing my PhD or my book, maybe chapter 2. A literature review is not simply, and that's why it's so important, critical reading and critical review of what you are reading. A literature review shouldn't be simply you gather whatever information you have about, in my case, territorial disputes, and you tell the reader this is already published. No, you should read whatever it's already published, whether online or actual physical sources, and you decide, according to the intention you set, your aim, which ones are relevant for you. You may agree with them, you may disagree with them, they may prove your point, suppose statistics, they may prove the point that Palestinians are right, or Israelis are right, or any other point, yes? But you have to make the decision for the reader. It's not the reader's work, it's your work to decide which of these sources are relevant. That is why a literature review, you already are reviewing, are exploring these sources. It's not simply that in the literature review in your essay or monograph, you will tell the reader, by the way, Núñez published in 2027 this book. Núñez published in 2017 this other book, and he changed his idea. Yeah, that's Núñez. That's not the writer. Yeah? So you should tell the reader why Núñez 2017 is relevant for you, whether you agree, you disagree, whether there is a gap in Núñez investigation, and so on. Again, these are different kind of reviews. So I'm not going to go into detail about this. It would take too long. Common mistakes, to me, the usual mistake is this one. People try to summarize, let me go back here. People try to summarize what they've already done. You may do that. Again, that's usually a handbook or a very highly descriptive essay. Don't simply summarize. When you're reading something and you are trying to bring that research into your paper, try to tell why that research is in your paper. If not, you are simply bringing a brief summary of whatever is being published before. And I tend to be very blunt about these kind of things. I know how to write, I know how to read. I can do that myself, and it's probably going to be faster. I use Google Scholar and I'll search for the sources myself. So I don't need anyone to do that for me. So again, if I'm going to read something from someone else, I'd like to see their point of view, whether they agree or disagree with something that has been published before, or why that is relevant or not for their own angle. I'm not going to go into much detail on this, simply to say something, to make a point. I am conscious, I assume, and I ask this question later, most of you have a legal background. I don't know if all of you, but most of you should have legal background. I assume you are all familiar with basic search engines like Westlaw, LexisNexis. That is a starting point for any lawyer. I would strongly advise you, and probably right now this is my favorite, Alan Bryman from Oxford University Press, because he offers a more complete view or a broader view. There are many other search engines. Even today we have people in Hong Kong. You may use as well Google Scholar, not the regular Google, Google Scholar or Web of Science or JSTOR or even your libraries. And you may use, I'm right now explaining in English, part of my research as well as in Portuguese or in Spanish. I use other languages. You may use your home language as well. The only thing, if you do use papers or books published in different languages that have not been translated into English, if you are going to do the translation, you have to tell your reader you do the translation. Yes, so translated by the author. Suppose I'm using something related to the Falklands. Only most of the things are in Spanish only when we talk about Malvinas in Latin America. They are not translated into English. So you do the research in Spanish, in my case, and I translate myself. You tell your reader that particular piece of information, the original is in Spanish, translated by the author, yourself. Same if you are using, again, we have people in Hong Kong, Mandarin or any other language. I challenge you not to take only Westlaw, LexisNexis, but to be broader, because you will enrich your research by using different search engines. And again, the same book from Bryman, it explains very clearly. To me, it's as simple as going through the research, key terms, going not even for the abstract, a few lines in the abstract, and only then, that's probably my very first and big filter in order to decide what is relevant for my research, what is not. When you go for this kind of research, you will have tons of sources depending on, I had a meeting earlier, someone is writing about the conflict between Palestine and Israel. I was telling her, try to be very careful because it's very controversial and also it's highly rich in terms of sources. You will have to, how do you know where to go? Your aim, what I said before, what I said 2 weeks ago, when you have a clear destination, a clear aim as a researcher, as an author, you will automatically know which of the sources are relevant. Advice, simply stick to the abstracts, and if you find the abstract relevant to you, that's when you read the book or you read the particular paper. Research methods, many of them, my intuition tells me, because most of you, maybe all of you have legal background, you may go for doctrinal or black letter law. If you stick to the conceptual analysis or whatever it's already been decided and created by Parliament, in our case here in the UK. You may use case law as well. There are many others. The only proviso I'm going to put, when we talk about socio-legal and empirical research, in particular in the UK, I'm not familiar with other jurisdictions, but in particular with the UK, we have protocols to follow when we involve people. Socio-legal research and empirical research, unless you are using third-party information, which means statistics, for example, coming from other sources, you will need ethical approval, depending on the institution you are working or the publisher you are intending to publish with. So please ask this question, because if you involve people in your research, which means asking them questions, gathering information directly from people, you will need ethical approval, at least in this country. It's not only a moral requisite, it's a legal requisite. So again, socio-legal and empirical research, if you are in this country, we can discuss this. If that's the intention, it can be done. It's not that complex, but you need to follow a particular requisites. Other jurisdictions, again, you will need to check the legislation in your country or at your university. Now, the one thing I want to say, and I agree, Bryman doesn't talk about methodology only. He talks about research design. And that's what I refer to as well, in this occasion, applicable to methods. You may pick one particular method, which is fine, what I call unidimensional view, if I'm talking about methodology. But you may take a multidimensional, which means you may combine different disciplines or different methodologies. That is why he talks about research design. Again, the more experience you have in academic writing and academic research, you may decide to combine, and you may actually do it intuitively without being conscious about this decision. And that is why before you do anything, when you set the intention, you will know what kind of methods you want to use. If you are going to, let me go back for a second here to this list, a sample of don't simply decide, because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to explore legislation, I'm going to stick to doctrinal research or black letter law research. Without knowing, you may be using case law study as well, because you refer to cases decided by the Supreme Court in this country or by a particular appeals court in this country and so on. You're combining two case study, two research methods. That is a research design. You make these decisions very early when you are drafting your structure and you are deciding your intention, your main aim. Why this is, and I talk about this in particular, and we have a session about this. This has to do with good writing, good academic writing, good academic research. In the future, if someone else wants to use your sources, if someone else wants to argue against your position, or use your position because they are in favor and they may want to complete, to carry on your research, that has to do with reliability, replication, and validity. Why? Because they should be able not only to trust you as an author, but to go back to your footnote and your bibliography and to trace back your own research. Because it may be the case, we are humans, it may be the case that you intentionally or unintentionally, you're biased in your opinion. Yes? Or your analysis may be biased or maybe simply wrong. You may use the wrong information, or you may simply have a typo error and quote a wrong information coming from statistics. That has to do, again, with reliability, replication, and validity. That is why it's so important when we talk about research, how you put them, footnote and bibliography. You have to tell your reader about these kind of things. If this was an opinion piece for social media or even your own blog, like I have my own blog, it's completely different. It's your opinion, you own that. However, when we talk about academia, because the ambition in any discipline, this is not philosophy, this is science. The ambition in science is to grow together and to dare to disagree with our opinions. How? By tracing back whatever research we have done before and whatever sources we've used. Yes? Any reader should be able to compare your results. How? By going back to your own research. If not, you're not offering a very fair platform for discussion. And it wouldn't be science, it would be called dogma. We see that, that I dare to say that is bad writing and bad academic research. That is not science, that is dogma. For that, we have the Bible or the Quran, which I'm not against, by the way, but they are religious and dogmatic monographs. We are not doing dogma here, we are doing science. And simply to finish off, so then I don't talk on, this session throughout. Practical tips. I'm going to be very brief here. Practical tips. Why I'm saying this? Because it's been helpful, for me. When you're writing anything from a template, a structure, or a very early draft to your final essay, final PhD or final monograph, try to store everything. How I do it, and I learned that very early at Manchester University when I did my PhD. Yes, of course you will have your laptop, of course you will have your pen drive or external hard drive, that's fine. I tend to have all this with me. So I have usually 2 or 3 copies. But the one advice I want to give today, have always a dedicated email account. I created more than 10 years ago a dedicated database account with Gmail. You can use Yahoo, Hotmail, or any other, and simply send to yourself by email whatever document you consider they're relevant, either part of your research or your own writing. I don't tend to send to myself PDFs. What I tend to send to myself are my own drafts. Why? Because it can be the case that you have a problem with your laptop, hard drive, or simply you are, I'm conscious we have people from different places here today. You simply be like me, you may be traveling all around the world, even with the pandemic, and you may not want to bring your laptop, or you may forget your pen drive. The information will be stored. How? With your email account. Yeah. So my advice to you, if I have probably the one of the most important tips from this session today, have a dedicated email account to which you send your maybe your resources, but mainly your drafts. I'm not talking about this because this is Manchester Law Journal. They are asking of Scholar. I'm not going to go into detail because depending on the publication in the future, I don't use Scholar. I use Chicago style. So it depends on your own choice as an author and the publisher as well. Manchester Law School Journal wants you to follow Scholar. If you do have any questions, let me know. We can talk on a one-to-one basis about it, but I'm not going to discuss this in this session. And probably a second tip here, I mentioned this in most of my classes, if not all, because I see this times and times again, even at LLM level. Quotations. You may use quotations as part of the content in your introduction, and so try to keep them to the minimum. If you want to use quotations, paraphrase them. If I want to read somebody else's work, I get their book or their article. I wouldn't want to see as a reader quotation. Why? Because that's a collage rather than your own writing. However, if your complete essay is about a particular definition, a particular concept, or a particular article within an act, of course, you may quote that article, that passage, and so on, and then you may follow, you may review, you may compare, contrast that particular quotation because it's central, it's relevant to your research. Keep it to the minimum. Try to paraphrase, and always, of course, mention the sources you use. Plagiarism, I'm not talking about this. Critical reading we refer to. And the only thing I want to, let me see here, yeah. Why critical reading? Because we are aiming at Manchester, I mean, creating is probably PhD level, and when you write your own monograph. What we are aiming here at Manchester Law School Journal, like any journal, is this evaluating or analyzing. That is why, coming back to the literature review, and when you go through your sources, it's not simply a brief summary of whatever you are reading. You have to have what we call a critical reading and decide whether the person you are reading is an authority within the field, whether the information is current, whether there are bias. Who makes those decisions? You will have to make those decisions. So you have to tell your reader whether that particular article you think as an author is valid or not. I may disagree. Your reader, may disagree with you. That's the challenge in academia. Again, this is not dogma, so I can't disagree with you. However, you have to think about these kind of things when you are going to incorporate, whatever sources you incorporate as literature review within your work. And for me, I think that's all so far. And again, this is a brief presentation. So then we can have a more interactive session. So far, we did last time title, aims, and objectives. And today I wanted to give a bit of an introduction of not methodology, but designing your research and how you may incorporate one method or several other methods, and how to incorporate as well sources, the ones that are relevant. Next time we'll cover the structure and how I tend to design my own structure before I start writing. The challenge probably, I don't know if we'll have time today, but probably for next time, if you want to bring, so we can see whether you are using this critical reading or not. If you want to do your own research about the particular paper you are writing right now, because I assume you are already writing something, you can already bring your research with me. And again, not only the paper, what I dare you to do is to write a brief, very brief summary. I put here 250, even shorter. If it can be shorter, even better. So to give us an idea why the particular sources you bring today or you're going to bring in 2 weeks' time are relevant to your research. And I think that's it. Yeah, all invited to come to Juris North. We have one more discussion next week about legal theory. We have an important scholar next week, the official translator for Kelsen in English, Dr. Stanley Paulson. All invited to, if you haven't, to send your abstract to the Manchester Law Journal here at Manchester Met University, and my details again. And let me finish, if I can stop the share, and I'm going to finish the recording, so then we can